Good evening, and thank you all for joining us for this really important Facebook Live discussion here on blackdoctor.org. And I know when you come here and you watch some of our programming, we're always talking about medical conditions. Of course, we have been in the middle of this pandemic kind of talking about COVID so much and the vaccines and all of those things. But there is a growing medical concern that's happening amongst our youth. And when I say our youth, we like to use the term betwennials. And those are the people that are just at the end of their teens and just before they get to their 30s. And so that's kind of that between age area. And there's this phenomenon that has been growing, and that phenomenon is vaping. And so what we have here is we have a couple of ambassadors are going to be with us this evening, kind of talking about vaping, what's going on, what's really happening, particularly on our college campuses, on our HBCU campuses, and specifically Black women and vaping and the increase in rise in vaping amongst Black women on these campuses. Additionally, at the end of the program, we're going to bring in our medical specialist, and we're going to talk about really the impact that vaping has on the lungs. And you'll see, it feels like it's better, but actually we'll find out tonight that it's not as good as you think it is when it comes to the body. And so there's some concerns we have there. So we're going to be talking to some youth ambassadors, and we're going to be talking to some medical professionals, and we're going to have a really, really robust discussion about vaping amongst our youth. So a couple of things, the housekeeping things we like to do is one, if you're watching us, let us know where you're watching from. Drop that in the comment section. Let us know where you're watching from. We always like to know where people are watching us from all over the country. Number two, if you know somebody that needs to be watching this program, please tag them and share this program with them, because this program is all about you. And number three, if you have any questions or if you want to make any comments to contribute to the discussion tonight, please drop that in the comment section and we will get it on screen, because we want this discussion to be robust, large, and include everything that you have to say. So I'm going to shut up and get to this program. So, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to show you a short video about vaping and its impact on one particular family in general, and then we'll introduce our first couple of guests. So sit back, watch this short video, and we'll be right back with you.
Growing up in my household with my mom, who's a smoker, my dad's a former smoker, grandparents, on and on, generations beyond that have used tobacco, but I never thought critically about how did that come to be, what impact is that having.
I started smoking when I was about 10. I mean, that's what's so complicated, is that the addiction. Initially, it was just fun. We continued to smoke. My habit, increased. So it has been a struggle.
We are the top leading organization who really sets out the advocacy agenda to come against the tobacco industry in the U.S. So in the Black community, the statistics about tobacco use, they're devastating, actually. There are 45,000 people a year, African Americans, who die from smoking-related diseases. These diseases stem from heart disease, cancer, stroke, and are really just the morbidities that exist in our African American community because of smoking.
It's no coincidence that my family smoked cigarettes or has used tobacco, and particularly menthol cigarettes. My mom smoked menthol cigarettes, and learning that that is not just, personal preference, but that was actually targeted, and the industry was very intentional in targeting Black communities with this flavor.
I can remember them coming into the neighborhood passing out free cigarettes, and it was Newports. Newport Menthol Light were a new product. It was a new product, and they were actually targeting our neighborhood and bringing cigarettes in.
So the Tobacco Free Kids organization has been around for 25 years now. We're celebrating that 25th year anniversary. Our mission of the Tobacco Free Kids is to eradicate smoking globally. We've done that by really focusing on that next generation to end smoking there. So we're focused on kids.
My eldest son was born in 1990. When he reached 7 or 8-ish, and he just broke down crying. And, I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "Well, Dad, you always tell me what to do, but you never do what I tell you to do." So I was like, "Well, what did you tell me to do, buddy?" And he's like, "I want you to quit smoking." I made the internal commitment to quit smoking.
My mom smoked from teenage years to June 6, 1981. And the reason I remember that day is it was my high school graduation. And she asked what would I want for graduation. And I said, "Mom, the best gift you can give me is to not smoke, give up cigarettes." My mom has not smoked since that day.
My role in the campaign for Tobacco Free Kids, working with the youth advocacy team, is basically to support our outreach to communities of color, especially youth, growing through partnerships with organizations.
We are committed to confronting the tobacco industry's preying on communities that have been marginalized. Specifically within the African American community, we are building a coalition of members who will help us to engage, to educate, and to actually spread the word within their communities on this devastating product.
And there you are. So
my job
as
is
you
to
can
make
see, there is this well done video about to kind of give you a history of where we are and what we're trying to do with this program tonight. And so I'm going to introduce you to one of the stars of that video, is our first guest tonight, and that is Miss Tiana Stewart.
Hi, Ellis. Hi, everybody.
I'm doing well. So Tiana is an engagement coordinator for the Speak Project, where she helps to design outreach and education strategies to help young Black women at HBCUs take action in the fight against big tobacco. Previously, she was a program associate with the youth advocacy team at the Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids. That's the video we just watched. And in this role, she supported strategic outreach and engagement with communities disproportionately impacted by tobacco use and predatory marketing. So welcome to this program. She also worked in a Peace Corps. She is everything that I wish I was when I was growing up. I'm like, ooh, I feel bad. I need to go back and do something better with my life. But yeah, I'll read all this stuff. But she holds a bachelor's degree in science and human development from Howard University and a master's of science in nonprofit management from Columbia University. That's Ivy League, y'all, where she was an HBCU fellow. So welcome to the program, Ms. Stewart.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Yes, like you said, that was me in the video. I look a little different without the movie makeup and everything, but that was me and my family telling our story about how tobacco use and the industry's predatory marketing has influenced us all the way to the point where I was working in a job where it was my job to educate people, youth especially, and especially youth from the Black community, about the dangers and help them to be connected and empowered to make a difference. So now in this role with the Speak Project, first Speak stands for Smoking Prevention Through Equity, Advocacy, and Knowledge. It's a program that by SAGSAW, Save a Girl, Save a World, where I'm working with their team as a engagement coordinator. And the goal primarily is to raise awareness among HBCU students about tobacco inequalities and the impact of tobacco use on your health, on our communities, and more importantly, as a social justice issue and a reason to, one, of course, if you're using tobacco, to stop and encourage your peers to stop, but also to take action in policy and advocacy on your campus and in your local communities.
Absolutely. Well, as you see what all that education does, right? So I'm going to bring on our next guest, and this is Miss Danisha Clark. Danisha Clark serves as an HBCU recruitment and ambassador management coordinator for the Speak Project, as Tayana was telling us about. She also serves as an intern in the Save a Girl, Save a World, um, which is a 501c3 organization where she was a college mentee for 3 years. Danisha uses her years of student leader experience to help the Speak ambassadors create and execute their program campaigns and build their presence on our participating college campuses. There's a whole lot of other stuff that Danisha did here. She's all about mental health. I'm just gonna keep it real. Keep 100. There's a lot of stuff here that these are two very, very well accomplished young ladies. Danisha is also a graduate of Clark Atlanta University. So shout out to all the HBCUs out there. Yeah, you didn't have to go to FAM like I did, but it's all good. You went to HBCU, so it is what it is. So welcome to the program, Danisha.
Thank you for having me.
Well, here's the deal. As somebody that is older, I have been not really attuned to what's going what's really going on these campuses. And so from what I'm hearing from when we had our kind of our pre-show meetings and from what you all have been telling me, there's been a growing issue of vaping on college campuses, particularly HBCU campuses, and particularly among Black women on HBCU campuses. And so, is that true? A, and then B, why is that?
Mm-hmm. So I guess for the first part, based on the data and figures, youth vaping is up, while although cigarette use is down, which was often the center of campaigns throughout history to stop smoking, stop smoking, stop smoking. That has been successful on the cigarettes front, but unfortunately, the tobacco industry has found new marketing techniques to reach younger people, younger and younger, and to put it in a different package, make it smell a little bit better, more accessible, cheaper, easier to hide from your parents. That makes it separate in your mind from what, at least for me, what my parents smoked. I didn't connect hookah and my mom's cigarettes. I didn't connect Black and Milds with my grandparents' cigars or chewing tobacco, but it's all kind of the same substance and coming from the same industry. So to start with that, yes, it is a growing issue. I think we have to acknowledge that although it is across the board, it is true that Black youth overall are not smoking at as high rates as their peers. But we are overrepresented in terms of cigar use, cigarillo use, and socially hookah is becoming a force to reckon with.
Right.
So I think it is definitely a variable on HBCU campuses and with younger Black people. But I'll speak for myself. Before I had the job at the Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids, I felt like this is not an issue that's relevant to me. I don't smoke. My friends don't smoke. But in my mind, that only applied to cigarettes because I wasn't seeing people smoking cigarettes. I wasn't smelling it. It was kind of my mom, my grandparents. That's their issue. We're past that. But the fact of the matter is, I would go and socialize and enjoy hookah around campus. You see cigarillo packs everywhere, and we have to be more open about that conversation as well, especially as marijuana is becoming, legalized across different states. We have to talk about the role of some of those tools that are used for other purposes, but there's still tobacco from Black and Milds and on and on. So it definitely is an issue and it's growing. And I think, like myself, it may not seem like it is because it's kind of like right in front of our face but hidden, especially packaged differently, almost the size of USB ports. The smell is not nearly as harsh. It tastes a lot better, so it's much easier to disguise. And I think that is making it a lot more insidious in some ways, where people aren't realizing what they're consuming.
Right. And I would like to add on to what Miss Tiana said. It's definitely marketed as something cleaner, something different. Growing up, it's always like cigarettes are bad. Cigarettes, they have this smell, they have this effect like on your mouth, like the way your hygiene looks, the way your fingers look, things like that. But when you get to college, there is nothing that tells you about hookah. I didn't even know that hookah was tobacco the first time that I socially went to a hookah bar. But those are things that are, marketed to us through secondary, third party, promoters and things like that. They kind of come onto the college campuses and market this hookah as something that's, is fun, it's light, it's sexy, it's something that, young women and young men can kind of get into and do socially without like all the gross stuff that comes with the cigarette. However, a lot of time they don't know, the extreme harsh outcomes that can come from it. And so I'll definitely say working with this program, I learned a lot about hookah and vape pens and just like the market and the way that they target us, how they target the youth, why they target the youth, things like that. And so it's been really interesting, I'll say.
Well, that's an interesting point. Why, Tanisha, Tayana, why do you think they're targeting the youth in this space?
Hmm. Yeah, there's a few elements there where one, the earlier you start with something as addictive as nicotine and tobacco products, you have a lifelong customer that will make you a lot of money.
Mhm.
And additionally to being more impressionable, youth want to fit in with their friends. And when you see a friend using something, it may just be, even if your parents have told you stay away from this, stay away from that, it may seem approachable if you have people in your life that are using it. And then another factor is the kind of developmental phase we're in as teenagers, as young adults. We think we're going to live forever. We of course we read, we see the numbers, but that doesn't apply to me. Of course, I'm the exception. So you aren't as scared to try something, even though you know what's up. You've seen all the charts, you've seen the scary commercials. That's kind of can't stand in the face of just youth, and it's difficult to see the long term impacts. So I think that's one thing that is important about this program, is to find the personal connection and to see how this is affecting your family, affecting you, affecting your community. And it is more than just a personal choice. You may think I'm making the choice myself. Oh, I just like this product. I just want to do this. But when you learn the history of the marketing techniques, you realize I may not be in as much control as I think.
Exactly.
So there is, I mean, there is a social aspect to it, right? So so you both kind of spoke to it, and I've experienced it myself, where like you go to a club or even some restaurants that have the DJ that pops up in the corner, and next thing you know, there's some guy, and you could order a hookah, right, along with whatever your beverage of the evening is. They'll bring the hookah over, and they'll pop it in, and then how many ends do you need? And there becomes this really social aspect to it that makes you even forget about how dangerous this process is, right? And so it becomes another revenue stream for the clubs and the promoters. And then you've got this completely social aspect that is completely disconnected from cigarettes, because cigarettes have been banned, smoking have been banned in most buildings around the country. So if you have to pull out a cigarette, you got to go outside. But the hookah is inside, right? At the table, at the bar, at the wherever. And so you're like, so that sends a message that this is more socially acceptable. And I think people are erroneously drawing that line that says because it's acceptable, it's healthy. Is that kind of what we're seeing, what's happening in the community?
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely just a disconnect a bit. It's fun, like you said. You take your cute Instagram videos, you blow your smoke, and it is fun. There's an aspect to it and there is an effect, a physical effect on you that you
Right.
experience, the buzz, the nicotine buzz. So it's not all just for social and look. There's also some benefits, and I mean, not benefits, but an effect on your body. So
Right.
when you say you're trying to escape from finals week or you're stressed out or whatever it may be, it's not just a fun place to talk with your friends. You're also getting the effect that you get from smoking, whether it's calming you down or relaxing you or whatever it may be. So there's another element there too, where it is a chemical substance that has impacts on your body.
I definitely agree.
Woman of a few words there, Danisha. I love it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the dangers of youth vaping, particularly on our HBCU campuses and what's going on. And we're talking to Tayana Stewart and Danisha Clark from the project, as we just lost Tayana. She'll be joining us here quickly. And so one of the things that, as I was doing the research for this, and Juul, everybody's kind of known that manufacturer, right? It's kind of the largest manufacturer. And I watched the program on Netflix about the start of Juul. And the interesting thing about it, it was a grad school. A guy was in grad school. He was getting his MBA at Stanford University, and he came up with this, and this was his project, and he came up with Juul, and it took off because he just applied all the business principles to Juul. And so one of the things that they talk about in the documentary, and I was researching about it, is that it's the flavors, right? And cigarettes, traditional cigarettes, even menthol, even though we've talked about the dangers of menthol and how they really targeted Black communities with menthol cigarettes, there's no comparison in terms of the flavor to what happens in these e-cigarettes and with these vaping. They've got banana and tutti frutti and strawberry and all chocolate and all kind of flavors, blueberry and all kind of flavors, and the same thing is happening with hookah. And so that widens the gap between how our minds frame traditional cigarette smoking, even a Newport, versus I just got this little thing that looks like basically a USB port on my computer that I just pop in, and there's no smell. It's just water and vapor that's happening. So I think that's really what's driving it. Could be, and I'm going to ask you all, is that you think, is that with the flavoring, is that what's driving kind of the lack of stigma that comes with vaping and hookah?
I would definitely say yes. I feel like the more flavors that you have, the more appetizing in a sense that it seems. Like how you said, it's like tutti frutti, it's banana. There's like flavors like watermelon and just fun flavors in a sense that young people like, and it's almost like nostalgic in a sense. And so when you see flavors like that, it's different. Like I can't go in a gas station and look at cigarettes and be like, oh, let me get the cherry flavored cigarettes. Like that just
Right.
doesn't sound like a normal thing. But if I'm
Right.
in this fun environment and I have this clean smoking, clean hookah kind of thing, like I'm not smoking a cigarette, there's not a strong menthol scent coming from it, it just smells like bubble gum. I
Right.
feel like people overlook other things because they're so caught up in the nostalgia. It's like eating a cookie and not looking at, the ingredients on the back and realizing that, even though it tastes good, everything
Right.
in this cookie is not good for you.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I feel like it's
Yeah.
definitely, it's like almost like targeting like the childish part of your mind, not childish in the sense of immaturity, but childish in the sense of like the psychological aspect of it, like how they get you in.
Yep. In addition to making it more like the disconnect between, the harms and the flavor, going back to the tactics used with menthol, it also makes it easier to smoke. With menthol, the role was to kind of like soothe your throat before it goes down. My mom told stories when she was young, you're coughing, you're hacking a lung up. And most people, that would deter them very early on. If you smoke at 12 years old and you're burning and everything, you may not ever pick it up again. But when you have the menthol to kind of block some of those effects, it's not, nearly as harsh. It doesn't feel as harmful physically immediately. So with the Juul, it's even more sophisticated in terms of the flavor. The way the vapor is much less harsh. So there's another aspect where it gets you on ramped a lot smoother onto the addictive kind of train.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, it really kind of blew my mind. And then when I found out that one Juul pod that you put into the contraption is the equivalent of smoking 20 cigarettes.
Mhm.
And so when you think about it in that sense, right, how harmful, like if you think about smoking 20 cigarettes, like you're like, oh, I wouldn't even, like most people wouldn't even think about doing that other than cigarette smokers. But if you just went to a regular person and said, okay, but those people that walk around those pods and they can sit. I saw, as a side note, I was at a youth football game and we're all up in the stadium, and this guy pulled out his jewel and took some puff and blew it out, and nobody said anything until after he had done it like 4 or 5 times because the smell wasn't there, right? And then I don't know how much research has been done on secondhand smoke coming from, you know, vaping versus other events, but we all have been kind of schooled on the dangers of secondhand smoke with cigarettes, not with vaping. And so he felt really comfortable just pulling it out and using it because the stigma was the smell. And once they removed the smell, it lost the stigma. And so it's just a lot going on. So I'm just going to ask if anybody has any questions or anything you want to add to tonight's discussion, please drop that in the comment section and we'll get it asked or on screen. We're talking to Tiana Stewart and Danisha Clark from Speak and from Save Girls, Save the World organizations about the dangers of youth smoking. And so when you're talking to people that do use hookah or that do vape, what are they saying to you with regards to how they got started and why they continue to use the products?
Well, very often. Go ahead, Danisha.
Oh, I was gonna say a lot of people I know who still like smoke hookah or use tobacco products. This kind of they do it in the sense of them being stuck in their ways. Like if I'll say, hey, you know, like why don't we like not order hookah when we go out to eat tonight? It's kind of just like, but like why? Hookah's fun. And it's like it's also dangerous and not really good for you. And it's like even if you explain like the health thing, it's like, but it's fun. And it's like they don't realize that the addictive part has already set in. Because now every time you want to go out to eat, you want to order the hookah. And the thought of you not ordering hookah is like not fun to you. And
Right.
it's like you gotta be able to decipher when something is no longer fun and it's actually detrimental to you.
And that's a really important point of the connection with other activities and tobacco use, whether it's hookah or whatever it may be. And very often in my peer group, I've had friends who I come back home from college and I see them smoking a cigarette and I'm like, when did you start this? Like, what is going on? And very often they start just when they go out to party, just when it's cold, just when I'm in certain environments. But eventually the certain environments, you can't contain the craving to certain environments. So often it starts with just socially, maybe when I'm drinking, just when I'm hanging out, just when I'm around these certain people, we do this and that's it. But then it slowly can trickle into, it's a part of your daily habits. So I think that point is very important. Just sometimes it's associated with an action. For some people, maybe drinking coffee. For my mom, that was it. Every night you drink coffee. And I have to give an update actually on that video. She was talking about her experience smoking. She's actually quit. She's been smoke free for the past couple of months. She's been really proud of that journey. So I have to make sure to add a little asterisk in that video.
We'll put a comment on it and pin it to the top of the comment. Hey, she stopped. She stopped. Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. So Sheila is in the comments. She's saying companies spend millions of dollars in research and target marketing to attract our youth. They know what messaging will get their attention and dollars. When she says that, so that go ahead.
No, I was saying the reaction, just a lot of nodding. It's spot on.
Yes.
Absolutely. So and then somebody else put it, just what I thought meth was at the top. So when it comes to marketing, because Juul has come under fire a number of times for their Instagram page, right? And the types of posts that they're putting on Instagram, and they have been taken to court behind that with regards to the way their posts were looking, and they definitely were being followed by and liked by people that were younger than that. They weren't even smoking aged, but they were seeing people that were happy and smiling and young and hip looking and things like that, which is attractive because as we know, the primary user of Instagram are teenagers and 20 somethings. And so when you're putting those types of advertisings out there without that disclaimer that cigarette ads have to have on them, then you're really it's almost a way of false advertising. Because, and I've heard you all say it in your description, it's always described as fun. It's being aligned with fun and not with danger. right? So we say, oh, smoking hookah is fun. I get to have fun with my friends. I'm enjoying this fun shared activity and not even equating the fact that this activity is dangerous.
Yeah, and that marketing is very intentional. When you look back, we can go historically with menthol. The patterns are there with for Black people in terms of wanting to be cool and connecting it to jazz music and connecting it to women being sexy and attractive, and the cigars being kind of like I'm a boss. I have money. I have whatever. You have your whole layout set up. The cigar lounges and kind of that whole aesthetic. And then
Yeah,
you see younger people. You have the fun is cool, is lighthearted, and particularly the connection sometimes with music, whether it can be hip hop or even in lyrics, you'll see branded T-shirts, and sometimes it's tricky because you now they have some parameters on Instagram where you have to know if something's sponsored. Sometimes people are wearing T-shirts with a logo that looks like a tobacco brand logo, but with words kind of interchange. So
right,
even in times where it's fashion, this is a cool shirt. You customize it, but you still are associating it with this product with this tobacco product. So it's subtle, but it's the same kind of tactics used and repackaged, just keeping up with the times. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. TikTok, we're listening on Twitter all day long. You see the jokes about hookah smoking and things like that. And sometimes you never know who's really behind those accounts.
Exactly. And I'll say to add on, it's very intentional, especially like just in pop culture in itself. How Tiana said within fashion and TikTok, social media is also, in music videos. It's several hip
mhm,
hop music videos where they'll just, be promoting like a brand pin and they'll have their video model, you know, just is giving like sex appeal almost. And
right,
so it's just seen as like Tiana said, it's fun, it's sexy, it's not considered dangerous. And so I feel like if they had to have the same requirements that tobacco products have, like the same notification that like, okay, this is how many, chemicals we have in our product. This is how
right.
many, like the Surgeon General's warning for the vaping products and hookah, the same way that they do cigarettes. I feel like it'll kind of open people's eyes more to what they're actually doing, what's actually being promoted to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, um, I'm really lamenting right now because I'm just like, I've done all of these things, right? And you all are making some wonderful points with regards to, like, when I've gone to cigar bars, my friends, and I being completely transparent, I thought it was sexy when I would see a group of women sitting there smoking a cigar, right? Like, oh, that's kind of sexy, right? And not realizing the detrimental effects that it had, on them. And so you go, I've been with friends and done the hookah thing and really enjoyed that whole sharing and just passing around the room. And then you start thinking about all of those other behaviors that kind of could cascade from right. So oh, it's just a black and mild. There's four in a pack, and then it goes from black and mild. So you went from cigar to hookah to the social stuff, and now you're doing black and mild, and then it just keeps going on. And that's how you come back from college. You got the friend that's now smoking Newports by himself, where he went from a social hookah smoker to now he's on the corner smoking Newports because that addiction has grown over that time.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up an important point when you talked about the black and milds and coming in like multiple in a pack. There's another cost of affordability. If you're around anybody who smokes cigarettes, they talk all day long about how the prices are going up. It's too
Yep.
expensive. I can't afford this habit anymore. But there's a lower barrier of entry for some people, for young people especially. You'll always see two for whatever deals, a lot of coupons with the perfect colors to attract your eye. And they've done some studies about the placement even of advertisements in corner stores, eye level for children, not eye level for an adult. So some of these vaping advertisements, they're colorful, they're bright, but they're also right at the level of to catch your attention, to catch your child's attention.
Right. What's funny is that when I was growing up, and this was a long time ago, but they were candy cigarettes, right? And that was cool. I don't know if they had it when I was coming
Yeah,
through.
we
They
had
had,
them.
they still had a
I
candy cigarette.
remember.
Come on,
Yeah.
man. And so we thought it was so cool.
Because it's like, I was gonna say it's like because as a kid, you see all these adults smoking cigarettes, and then you have your candy cigarettes. So you're doing the same thing as them. And then it's like when you think about it with a vape pen, they almost probably won't even see it as it being something detrimental. Like an adult can leave their vape pen on the couch or something, and the kid goes, "Oh well, she did it, so I'm gonna do it too." It's so
Right.
easy.
And with the
Right.
candy, the candy cigarettes, another element too. They didn't taste good. That was the other part. It
That
was
was
like
terrible.
there was nothing good about the candy itself, but it was fun to play and play that role.
It was
Exactly.
grooming. Basically, they're getting you groomed, and it's desensitizing you to that process of smoking a cigarette. And then in the documentary that I saw on Netflix, um, they really followed some girls in high school, and they were talking to the administrators and saying how much harder it was to catch kids smoking in school because cigarettes you could smell. They went to the bathroom, lit up a cigarette, and even if they're standing by the window, you could smell. There's a distinctive smell with a cigarette. But
Mhm.
these girls were going in the bathroom, and he was a male principal, so he didn't have any just cause of just busting up in the female bathroom,
Mhm.
and it looked like a USB. It looked like this is a regular, so they could carry it out of their homes. They could have it in their back pocket. So it's not like a pack of cigarettes. Say cigarettes can get crushed with the books, and you try to hide it. It was a way easier to catch, and so you would have to kind of try to catch them as they were coming into the school and make them empty their pockets, and so there was this invasion of privacy. So there's all these other kind of issues that come with trying to stop it in, especially in high schools, and then when you get to college, it's way different because you're an adult, you're free, so you're on this campus. You walk down to the corner store. I'm 18. I'm good, right? And so
Mhm.
there's just a so I'm going to ask you about the success. Do you think that your program would speak up, and do you think that these type of programs are having an impact on these HBCU campuses where people can really understand the dangers that are associated with these really um, social activities?
Mhm. So
Um.
I think
Oh yeah. I'll let you go
definitely
first.
I'll say yes in terms of the importance of first of all exposure and awareness. That's the first step before anybody's gonna take up the cause and spring into action. They have to understand, okay, some of the facts and that is relevant to me in my life. And there's also a role that I can play in the fight. Sometimes you may see numbers, you see figures, and you feel like, okay, but what can I do about this? This is not my problem. This is the tobacco industry. This is whatever it is. And the onus to me does lie on them. And there's a lot of people fighting for policy changes, whether it's banning menthol, raising the age, banning certain flavors. There's a lot of people working on that end. But as students and as young people, you have a role, even if you're just talking to your parent about it. For me, that's how it began. That video started from me having a conversation with my family about, wait, did you know some of these things? Did you know this history? When did you start smoking? It was just a natural flow, and it turns into
Mm-hmm.
a project that I was able to pitch at my former job. I didn't expect any of that. It was just having a conversation, sharing what I was learning at my position because my eyes were open, talking to some of my peers. Some of my friends were like, "This new job you have, like, why are they focusing on black people, black young people? We don't have this problem." So I would go through my whole spiel. You know this, you know this, the history, and they were like, "Oh, okay, now I get it." So even little things like that, it makes a difference. So while overnight you may not convert it to a no smoking campus, or for example, that's of course, the goal is to have policies like that. But just starting conversations, raising awareness, to me is success.
Indeed.
Absolutely. So
Um.
go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say, just kind of going back to piggybacking off of what Tiana said about conversation. I feel like being able to have conversation can lead to people having, different considerations. So how she was able to talk to her family through learning the anti-tobacco policies and things like that through the program, I was able to go back to my own friend group and college peers and things like that and evaluate how they use tobacco and inform them on how some of their habits aren't healthy. And I feel like just me being able to do that from an intern standpoint, I know that the ambassadors who are physically on the campus spreading word of mouth about the program, having events, things like that will definitely make an impact on the campuses and definitely give us the difference that we're looking for.
Absolutely. So there was a question from Wendy in the comment section, and she says, "So what is being done to stop these companies?" And so, Wendy, I just did a quick Google search because the e-cigarette maker Juul that we mentioned earlier, they agreed to settle a lawsuit with the U.S. state. So the state of North Carolina, they settled a lawsuit for $40 million. That the state accused the firm of marketing its products to young people. And young people that were younger than the legal age of smoking, and so it's paying $40 million to North Carolina over 6 years. And will change its advertising in the region, and I believe they have shut down. Eventually, I think they have finally shut down their Instagram page. As y'all can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think Juul has shut down its Instagram page because even though they kept saying that they were going to change their practices, they kept going back to the same thing in terms of what they were putting on Instagram. And so that was probably going to open them up to more litigation in regards to how they're targeting their advertising. So I want to take this moment and bring in Dr. Michael Lenoir. He is not a stranger to Black Doctor, but he is also he's a pediatrician. He's an asthma allergy specialist. He is also a past president of the National Medical Association, and is well versed with what our topic is tonight. He has been listening into our discussion. So, first thing I would say is welcome to the program, Dr. Lenoir. And then, what are your thoughts on hearing everything we've been talking about so far this evening?
Well, when you asked me to join you this evening, you probably never knew that I chaired the anti-vaping task force in the East Bay for a couple of years, because we recognized as an allergist and as a pediatrician the danger of not only the product, but also the way in which it's delivered. If you look at how we deal with other illnesses in the lung, an aerosol is the best way to get any medicine deep into the lung. And vaping is like an oil spill in the bottom of your lung. It gets into the lung, it's aerosolized, and so the delivery is much more efficient than cigarettes. In addition, I think that the big issue is that we don't really understand exactly what's in all these things. There's 7,000 chemicals in cigarettes. There are less in vapes, but still there are a number of chemicals that nobody knows anything about. And so consequently, not only don't know what the short-term effect is, but more importantly, we know what the long-term effect is. It took us many years to realize that smoking caused lung cancer. It took us even more years to realize that persistent inflammation of the lung associated with asthma causes damage to the lung. We used to tell people, you can have asthma, you'll be okay, and won't damage the lung. Well, what happens in vaping is it's like I said, it's like pouring a oil spill into your bottom of your lung. Your lung then responds to it as an irritant, and it causes a lot of inflammation in those areas. And whenever you have inflammation in the knee, the arm, the elbow, you get scarring. And the same thing is true when you talk about inhaling, aerosolizing materials that are in the vape, the e-liquid that they call it, then you can't predict what's going to happen. And so consequently, I think in many ways, the danger of vaping is not going to be appreciated for the next 10 or 15 years, because that's when people are going to start to have chronic lung problems. And so we felt here in the Bay Area that it was just as dangerous as cigarettes. We treated it that way. However, the advertising agencies have been much more effective than we have. It's been a while. I haven't chaired the task force in a while, but it's been a while since I heard anything about vaping here in the Bay Area. So consequently, in some ways, they're winning. But if you think about vaping, then I tried smoking parliaments for about 3 days. And I thought I was cool. I had them hanging out the side of my mouth and, flicked them. I knew I'd do all of that. Then I realized how sick I was for the rest of the day. And I think but the story about vaping is, it is no less dangerous than smoking. Secondly, it's more dangerous because it's not regulated as much. And third, probably the most important thing, is we don't know the long-term impacts of people who vape on a regular basis. And so having said that, we've been against vaping for a long time, and hopefully when we all join hands and go after it in our communities, because we're the ones targeted, we'll be more successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, ladies, when you hear it's like a oil spill in the bottom of the lung, what comes to mind?
Yeah, that's powerful imagery, and I've never heard that comparison before. So definitely had me kind of like, okay, that's something that I could see being an impactful image for people to just visualize what is going on in your body. I know we've had examples with uh, cigarette smoking. We've all of us have seen all the commercials, all the examples of what can happen, but I've never heard that comparison with vaping. So I think that's definitely powerful imagery that can have an impact.
Anisha?
I would like to agree that it is powerful. It makes me think of like the Dawn commercials when, it's people out there trying to save the ducks. And it's just like you got to be able to save your lungs because,
Yeah.
you need those. Like we need the ocean, we need our lungs. So it's just a food for thought kind of thing.
And Dr. Lenoir, kind of talk about the inflammation, because I think that's a medical term that people don't really get when we're talking about it. And so you talked about it a little bit when you said inflammation that leads to scarring. And so when we talk about scarring long term, what effect does that have on your ability to breathe and get oxygen into the rest of your body if you've got scarring on your lung?
Well, the lung is a very delicate organ. Most people, since there's so much of it, they take it for granted. But it is where oxygen comes into the body and carbon dioxide goes out of the body. All right, so there's a very delicate lining there that allows this to take place. So if you've got something in the middle of that lining and your body says, well, this is not me, and it starts sending cells to repair the damage that those chemicals have done, then it doesn't regenerate the lining of the lung. It puts in a scar, just like it puts in a scar in your arm or your knee or your elbow. And that scar is not capable of helping that transfer of the oxygen you breathe in and the carbon dioxide you breathe out. And that's what happens in people with chronic obstructive lung disease. And that's what happens whenever you vape. I mean, little by little by little, you're destroying segments of your lung that are critical for you to make that gas exchange. And so all of a sudden you try to breathe in oxygen and it hits that scar and bounces back and your blood oxygen concentration is not the same. And so and there's some very delicate arteries there. There's a lining, there's what we call epithelial cells that promote that transfer. And when you throw a chemical in the middle of that is that toxic, it causes scarring. And then the more scarring you get, the less you're able to make the transfer across that membrane. And so that's what we see. That's what I see in my mind as an allergist, as an asthma specialist, as a pediatrician.
Absolutely. So now what we're talking about over long term is really, and oxygen has to get from the lungs to the cells of our body, and that oxygen travels from the cells to all the organs to help our organs function properly. And so if we diminish the capacity of our lungs to transfer oxygen to our cells, then just think about the impact that has on the rest of the body and the rest of the systems that is dependent upon getting oxygenized cells to be refreshed, to be able to work properly, function properly. And so all of those things can happen. And so if we're continuing to scar our lungs with vaping and all other tobacco related products, that's what we're doing. We're scarring, and much like that scar, like Dr. Lenoir said it perfectly, much like that scar, it's not helping anymore. It's done. And so it really can have a negative impact. So we wanted to do a kind of a robust conversation in terms of really talking about the impact and why it's so prevalent. And so we talked about, hey, it's very, very social. I've been caught in the social aspect of it too. I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm not just sitting here wagging the finger of judgment. I'm like, I've been there. I've been sitting at the table. who could, I haven't vaped, but that was just because, much like in the video, I grew up in a household where my father smoked, still does smoke. Yeah, he smoked those Benson Hedge Gold Pack for 50 years. Got them when they were giving free cigarettes to men when they were going to Vietnam. And so that was one of the things that they did. They sent free cigarettes over to men that were going to Vietnam, going to war, and they all came back addicted to cigarettes. And really they created customers for all those young men that were going. I don't know if they did it in World War II, but I do know they did it in Vietnam, and so that had a profound impact.
And you have to realize how long it took us to make smoking uncool. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, it took us 35, 40, 50 years before smoking wasn't cool. And the other thing that I don't want people to miss is that the way you give something to the lung, the more dangerous it is. And when we have little children, for instance, who have asthma, we don't give them the smoke. We give them the aerosol, because the aerosol gets that chemical medicine down to the very deepest part of the lung. And so when you're vaping with an aerosol, you're just taking a jackhammer. You might as well just start scraping off the ducts, because that oil is going to accumulate in the bottom of that lung. And eventually, over a period of the next 10 or 15 years, you're going to start to see people who have chronic lung problems because they vaped.
There was a comment from one of our YouTube watchers that says, vaping is more of a weed thing. I would ask our younger participants, is that true or is that not true?
I think Danisha.
Go ahead, Danisha.
Oh, okay. I would say it can be a weed thing, but vaping can come in the form of nicotine. It can come in the form of like a hookah pen. It can be, a marijuana pen like CBD or THC, things like that. But when you hear things like Juuls, when you go into gas stations, those are nicotine based pens. Those are like tobacco, e-cigarette based pens. A lot of the time when you see people, in public smoking, whether they have the little stick or like the big giant vape, a lot of those are tobacco based. And so it's definitely got to be open minded about the different kinds, because that's how they kind of, sneak people by making it look like, oh, it's a weed thing. If I don't smoke weed, I don't have to worry about it. But not necessarily. So.
Right. I tell you, that disinformation and misperception is a powerful thing. Tayana, what do you think when you hear when somebody says vaping is more of a weed thing?
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of the times more so, especially with what's going on the marijuana cannabis front. So I think that's an element at play too, where it is becoming. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the vapes we were thinking are Juuls, maybe some other things in them. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of a variable in that. But I think Danisha's point is spot on. About how what in terms of tobacco use, the vaping, that's in terms of the epidemic is related to tobacco based vapes.
Dr. Lenoir, I got a question from our audience, and they're asking, has there been any studies or is there information about negative for secondhand smoke with regards to vaping? So this person is saying, he's saying he works at a restaurant. A lot of the servers at the restaurant vape, and he's concerned because he's out there with them. He's asking if he's at risk as a result of, even though he's not actually vaping himself, is he at risk by being around what they exhale when they're vaping?
I think we can look at the studies that are done on people who smoke around patients with asthma. It appears that there's very little difference in how a child will do if the parent smokes outside or if the parent smokes inside. And I would imagine that while I've seen a couple of studies that said that secondhand smoke or secondhand vaping is not as dangerous as smoke, but still has some impact.
Okay. So, Rodney, I guess the answer is possibly. So it's less impactful as secondhand smoke from a cigarette, but there still could be some impact because, again, vaping is such a new industry. I mean, we're talking about less than 20 years old. Vaping is such a new industry. Data is still being collected, and that long-term data is still being collected. And so, and then once that data gets collected, much like as Dr. Lenoir was talking about, much like what happened with smoking, we got the data on smoking. We realized that the cigarette companies had it much longer than before they got out, before the whistleblowers let it out. But once we got that data, it still took time for people to wake up and stop, right? And we had to really put a severe impact, financial impact, on the industry to stem the tide of people smoking. So I think that something similar is going to have to happen with regards to vaping, because again, it's got, as we talked about tonight, the flavors, the social aspect, the fun, the way it's really been disconnected from cigarette smoke, and then we've kind of put cigarette smoking out on this island, and everything else around it is okay and acceptable and cool and not as bad as cigarettes. And so once cigarette becomes the boogeyman, we don't think about all the other things that are associated with tobacco, other than probably like dip. Chewing tobacco has a bad stigma as well. But it, I don't, in our community, dipping and chewing tobacco hasn't seemed to be as impactful as these ads for vaping and cigars. As we're wrapping up here with our program, I'm going to ask our guests to kind of give their final thoughts, and what do you think the next steps are? What do you think would be the best way to really kind of get this messaging out to our community with regards to the dangers associated with vaping and hookah?
Mm-hmm. Well, first I'll start with our program, the Speak Up Project. We're ongoing on 10 HBCU campuses, and we're actually actively recruiting. And for students on those campuses, young women, it's a great way to get involved. And if you're looking for more information about that, please visit saveagirlsaveaworld.org/newsletter and sign up for the newsletter and get more information about that. But there's a comment that I think is a perfect kind of something I would love to respond to on this front.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's from Camellia. I'm not sure. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. But she said, our baby's coming up missing. This is the conversation. And I think that's not an uncommon feeling about tobacco control and tobacco advocacy. With all things that we're facing as Black people, sometimes it feels like we're going to spend time about tobacco, of all the things, police brutality, the list goes on. We all know the list. We feel like, why is this deserving of some of that attention? But there's some numbers, or at least a figure I want to share about tobacco use, and that is the number one cause of preventable death among Black Americans. And 45,000 Black people die related to tobacco-related illnesses, from tobacco-related illnesses. So, of course, there's no competition in terms of causes. There's enough to go around that deserve our attention. But I think that's a tactic to underestimate the impact that it's having on us. And it's difficult to sometimes see. It's not immediate as some issues are, but that doesn't make it undeserving of the attention, especially in the social justice aspect, given the history of the tobacco industry. So I think education, there are plenty of organizations out there, some of which we partner with, Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids, who have wonderful research projects and infographics built for youth and for adults to kind of break some some myths about tobacco use, and also how to get involved. So first, you want to get informed with the ultimate goal of being a part of the fight.
Absolutely. And is that website correct? SaveGirlSaveAWorld.org /newsletter?
Yes,
Okay.
that's it. Yep.
All right. Danisha.
So, to close up, I would like to say again, thank you all for having us. Thank you all for this conversation. I love being able, to talk about things that I've learned and learned from other people as well. I would say just to keep your eyes open, when you do see advertisements that are against vaping and smoking and things like that. And, just like if you see it on social media, a simple share can go a long way. Again, if you want to, get involved with the Speak Up program, saveagirlsaveaworld.org is your go-to. So if you know somebody who's interested, please send them our way. It's a very beneficial program, it's a very educational program, and being aware of what's happening on the health front is just as important as a lot of other things that are going on in the world, because they all matter and they all affect the youth, and the youth is like basically like the future. And we want to be able to live to have a future. So things like this, conversations like this are how we make a difference. Being able to, get on TV and see a commercial for a depression stick, as Truth Initiative called it,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
kind of makes things like this more possible, just because you're not the only person having this conversation. You know what I mean? Like, you're not the only person who's concerned with the health of the future generation. So, the way it can impact this just by doing your part.
absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Lenoir.
No, well, I think it's good to see young people talking to young people because they're more likely to listen to you than to listen to us. And I think it's so important that a platform like blackdoctor.org takes on these kinds of things because of your large reach. On our website, the African American Wellness Project, we have a lot of information on vaping and the dangers of it. But for you to be able to provide the platform for all of us to come together, to share our concerns, and to share the dangers of vaping kind of in a straightforward way, in the way Black Doctors allows us to do that, I think is so critically important. And it may be a long, like I said, this is the first vaping conversation I've heard in a very long time. And so I'm glad to see it's coming back to being something substantive.
Well, we appreciate that. And so if you want more information, you can go to, as Dr. Lenore alluded to, go to blackdoctor.org. You can also go to Save a Girl, Save a World. They're a wonderful organization, and we plan to partner with them to get more information out about vaping. And so we have some recent articles about vaping on blackdoctor.org. So you can always go there to our website and learn more about the dangers associated with vaping. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank our sponsors with our partners. I want to say sponsors, our partners, Save a Girl, Save a World, and the Speak Up organization. As Danisha's wearing that T-shirt, we're rocking the swag, and and our partnership with the African American Wellness Project, led by Dr. Lenoir. We are really, this is really important information to get out to our youth. And so I would challenge everybody that's part of the organization, that's part of the Speak Up. If you're on the Speak Up team, if you're part of Save a Girl, Save a World, share this broadcast. It'll be on YouTube in a few hours. Share the link. Get people to understand and get the link to start the conversation. Because I think as Dr. Lenoir talked about, having that oil spill in the bottom of your lungs and really talking about that scarring is really going to get people to see it in a different light and understand that cigarettes are not alone on an island. They are part of a whole tobacco industry, and that industry is designed to get you addicted to using their products. And so if you understand that, you can be healthy and you can still have that fun and still be social when you go out with your friends. Just don't have to get the hookah, and it's all good. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been a wonderful conversation with everybody here, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
All right. Thank you.